The hospital had its rhythms, and after years of night shifts, I could hear them without even trying. The murmur of machines, the shuffle of footsteps on polished linoleum, the beep of monitors, the low conversations drifting in and out of patient rooms. Hospitals never slept, but they did settle into patterns. Nurses noticed when those patterns broke. It was our survival instinct, honed through exhaustion and repetition. That night, the rhythm cracked. I was charting vitals at the nurses' station when I saw him. A doctor. Or at least, that's what he wanted us to believe. He walked with confidence, his white coat flaring slightly with each step, a stethoscope hanging around his neck like a badge of authority. But something was off. He didn't nod at familiar staff. He didn't linger with patients. His ID badge looked right at first glance, clipped to his coat pocket. But his eyes kept darting, left, right, behind him, as if measuring every corridor he passed. I'd never seen him before. I worked this floor for 7 years. I knew every doctor, every resident, every medical student that rotated through. Outsiders stood out fast. "Who's that?" I asked Denise, another nurse who leaned beside me. She squinted. "New attending?" I shook my head. "Not on this roster." I checked. The man disappeared around the corner, moving briskly toward the research wing. My gut tightened. Something was wrong. Curiosity can be dangerous, but in a hospital, ignoring it is worse. I logged out of the charting system and followed. My shoes squeaked faintly against the tile as I trailed him, careful not to let the sound carry. He stopped at a locked door, the med storage room. Without hesitation, he slid a keycard across the reader. The light flashed green. He slipped inside. That was impossible. Only specific, logged staff had access. Even residents didn't carry those privileges. Whoever he was, he had a card that didn't belong to him. I crept closer, pressing my ear against the metal door. Inside, faint shuffling echoed, the slide of drawers, the clink of bottles, then the sound of a phone camera shutter. My pulse spiked. He wasn't treating patients. He was stealing data. The door clicked again, and I barely managed to slip back into a shadowed corner before it opened. He emerged with a clipboard in hand, moving quickly toward the research labs. I followed at a distance, noting every detail. His gait was deliberate, his expression calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the board. He passed 2 real doctors without acknowledging them, his eyes locked forward. At the far end of the hall, he swiped his stolen card again, entering the restricted wing where pharmaceutical prototypes were developed. Few had access there. I ducked into the stairwell and yanked out my phone. Security picked up on the second ring. "This is floor 7, I whispered. "There's someone in a doctor's coat who doesn't belong here." He just entered the research labs with a stolen keycard. "Description?" I rattled it off. "We're dispatching a unit now," the voice replied. "Keep eyes on him, but don't engage." I hung up, shoving the phone into my pocket. My breath came fast. He was in restricted space now, and security moved slowly. If he got what he came for before they arrived, it might be too late. I couldn't just stand there. The labs were sterile, brightly lit with LED strips that hummed faintly. The air carried a faint tang of alcohol and chemicals. I stayed low, peering through the glass panels of each door as I moved down the corridor. There he was. He stood in front of a research workstation, typing quickly on a laptop that wasn't his. He pulled a small flash drive from his coat and plugged it in, downloading files. His eyes flicked to the door every few seconds, his shoulders tense. I crouched, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at me to back off. But then he moved again. He rifled through drawers, snapping photos of documents stamped confidential. He opened a locked cabinet with another swipe of his card, photographing vials labeled with trial codes. Corporate espionage. No doubt about it. I stepped back, forcing air quietly through my lungs. If he left now, he'd vanish into the city with everything. Security still hadn't arrived. I couldn't wait. I pushed the door open. His head snapped up instantly, eyes narrowing as he saw me. "What are you doing in here?" I demanded, forcing my voice steady. He didn't flinch. "I could ask you the same." His tone was smooth, professional, but his eyes were calculating. "You don't work here," I pressed. "That badge is fake." He slipped the flash drive from the computer and slid it into his pocket. "You shouldn't be here," he repeated, voice lower, sharper. My palms were slick with sweat. "Security's on the way. If you walk out now, maybe—" He moved fast. 1 second he was at the workstation, the next he was across the room, seizing my wrist. His grip was iron, twisting my arm behind me. I gasped, struggling, but he shoved me against the counter, pressing close. "You didn't see anything," he hissed into my ear. "Understand?" I kicked backward, my shoe connecting with his shin. He cursed and loosened his grip, and I tore free, stumbling toward the door. He lunged, grabbing the clipboard and swinging it like a weapon. It cracked against my shoulder, and pain flared. I screamed. The sound echoed down the sterile hall, bouncing off the walls. Heavy footsteps thundered closer. Security at last. The man cursed, bolting toward the opposite exit. He shoved the door open and sprinted down the hall. I staggered after him, adrenaline burning away the pain in my arm. Security guards surged past me, chasing him through the maze of sterile corridors. He was fast, weaving through carts and equipment, slamming doors behind him. The guards shouted commands, radios crackling, but he didn't slow. He darted into the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. His coat flared behind him, his stolen badge bouncing. The guards followed, boots pounding against the metal stairs. I reached the landing just in time to see him slam through the emergency exit, setting off alarms. The chase ended on the roof. The door burst open, and cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain. The man stumbled onto the gravel surface, breath steaming in the chill. Floodlights illuminated the helipad, casting long shadows across the rooftop. Security fanned out, forming a semicircle. Radios barked orders. "Drop the drive," one shouted. "Hands where we can see them." The man's eyes darted wildly, searching for escape. The edge of the roof loomed behind him, the city lights glittering far below. His chest heaved, his grip tight around the pocket where he'd hidden the drive. "You don't understand," he snarled. "They'll pay millions for this." "It's over," I called, forcing my voice through the wind. My arm ached where he'd twisted it, but I stepped forward anyway. "You can't run." For a heartbeat, he froze. Then, with sudden violence, he yanked the flash drive from his pocket and hurled it toward the edge. One of the guards dove, catching it inches from the drop. The man roared, charging forward. Security tackled him hard, bodies colliding on the gravel. He fought viciously, fists and elbows flying, but numbers overwhelmed him. His arms were wrenched behind his back, cuffs snapping into place. He collapsed against the ground, chest heaving, eyes blazing with fury. They dragged him away, his coat torn, his badge dangling uselessly. The flash drive was sealed in an evidence bag, the stolen documents secured. I stood under the floodlights, trembling, the weight of what almost happened settling on me. A stranger had walked into our hospital, slipped into our trust with nothing but a white coat and a fake badge. He had nearly walked out with research worth millions. Research that could have changed lives if it stayed where it belonged. Later, detectives told us he worked for a rival corporation, sent to infiltrate, steal, and vanish. He'd rehearsed every move, mapped every hall, hacked every card. The only thing he hadn't accounted for was the rhythm of the hospital, and a nurse who noticed when it broke. Hospitals survive on trust. Patients trust nurses. Nurses trust doctors. Staff trust each other to play their part in an endless, exhausting ballet. But that night proved how fragile trust could be. Now, when I walk the halls, I still listen for the rhythm. The shuffle of slippers, the murmur of machines, the beep of monitors. But I also watch the faces. I watch the coats. I watch the badges. Because I know now, sometimes the greatest danger isn't a failing body or a spreading infection. Sometimes it's the person who walks in through the front door, wearing the mask of authority, and waits for no one to notice. And sometimes noticing makes all the difference.